Mark your calendars, June 9th, the end of the US dollar as the global reserve currency. Then goes in to say, on June 9th, in the year of our Lord 2024, the agreement between the United States and Saudi Arabia to sell Saudi oil in US dollars exclusively ends. Saudi's prince has already notified the US that this agreement will not be renewed and they will no longer accept US dollars.
Let's
So,
talk about that.
yeah.
Like I said, I give John a lot of credit. He's a hell of a researcher, but this is a dangerous one. And I've always said that when you come out, see, I live in a world of probabilities, and I have been saying that that was going to happen for, I don't know, almost 4 years. In every podcast I've been doing, that's the thesis that I run with. You know that. I've said that on your channel since day one, and it will happen. The probability of it happening is extreme. Is it going to happen June 9th? I'll tell you why he's saying that. But let's go back for a moment. And at the end of 2023, this is an interesting take. The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia said China was our most important trading partner this year and for the next 50. Now, those words may have been chosen very carefully. June 6th today, it's debatable if it was the 6th or the 9th. If you read about it, it's kind of hard to figure out exactly, but one of these 3 days is 50-year anniversary of Kissinger signing the petrodollar deal. And then, for all intents and purposes, a 50-year deal where we protect the Saudis and by extension OPEC, and they then will denominate oil globally in dollars, and all of their excess surplus will go into U.S. treasuries. Now, when you take a look, first of all, at the U.S. Treasury roll, China as an example, there are many others that are doing the same thing, but we'll just focus on China for a moment. If you look at the difference between their treasuries being sold and their metal being bought, it's going like this. They're dumping treasuries. They're down to just over 700 billion from close to 3 trillion. Slowly, not too fast to cut off their nose to spite their face. But at the same time, their gold acquisition and their silver acquisition has been running rampant for almost 20 months in a row, unabated. And that's what they tell us. They're also the largest producer of it in the world. We have no idea how much they buy, what they're buying around the world by their sovereign wealth funds that aren't being reported. Maybe they're buying gazillions of dollars worth of coins all over the world too. Who knows? The point is that they are increasing their metal content and decreasing their exposure to the treasury market. So, I have my ear to the grindstone pretty well. If John is breaking this story, it's pretty amazing. I haven't heard it, but it wouldn't shock me because I've been saying it's going to happen. Now, to go out and say the Saudis have already told the West that this is the case, don't know where he heard that. Pretty extraordinary if it is the case. To say that it is done, pretty extraordinary. But let's think for a moment what happens if it is done. Every country on the planet who's had to stockpile dollars for 50 years doesn't have to do that anymore. And the massive dumping of dollars would create hyperinflation or a massive surge in inflation, at least here. The byproduct of which is that interest rates have to rise to compensate for that inflationary loss of purchasing power. And what does that do to the banking system that's over leveraged and undercapitalized, to the insurance companies that are loaded with treasuries, and to the real estate market, the bond market, the stock market? It's bang. It's a horrible religious experience at that point, if indeed it does happen the way that he's saying. I will say there's one other thing that's worth mentioning, and this just happened yesterday. We talked a lot about the Project M Bridge, which came out last year, which is a cross-border payment system that sidesteps SWIFT. It is a digital system that allows the cross-border settlement of digital currencies not using SWIFT. Now, it's interesting because I have felt for the last year or so that gold and oil are being remonetized across the globe. I would make the statement that commodities such as gold, silver, and oil and others, copper and food and, like wheat and soybeans and corn, all this stuff, rare earths, they're becoming more valuable than currency. I do believe that. And that's the Zoltan Pozsar. We're in Bretton Woods 3, where Bretton Woods 1 when we took over for the pound sterling after World War II, Bretton Woods 2 loosely when we became the petrodollar in 74, and Bretton Woods 3, a new system where it's all about commodities, backing a system. And this is where the marriage between blockchain and commodities come in. And we've been told that by the Russian finance minister, Sergei Glaziev, that this is indeed what will happen at some point when they issue their common settlement currency for the BRICS. It will be pegged to a basket of commodities and a basket of currencies. Okay, so we know that. But I have felt for a while, like if you take a look at oil being, when China won a contract to modernize Iran's biggest airport, they settled for it to be paid in oil. When you take a look at Saudi Arabia selling China their oil for the digital yuan or for the petro yuan bond, both are immediately convertible into gold in the Shanghai Gold Exchange. So you have gold and oil really taking on a role, as far as I'm concerned, and being remonetized globally. And if you look at what the Project M Bridge has done, their first two trades were both done last year. One was like in November and one was in December. The first one was a cross-border payment using the digital yuan, using Project Enbridge for oil. And I think it was with UAE, but I'm not positive. And the second one was a cross-border payment for gold using the Project Enbridge and the digital yuan. So I find it interesting that an article came out yesterday from Reuters saying Saudi Arabia has just joined a China-dominated central bank digital currency cross-border trial in what would be another step towards less of the world's oil trade being done in U.S. dollars. The move announced by the Bank for International Settlements on Wednesday will see Saudi central bank become a full participant of project, and this is in quotes, a full participant of Project Enbridge, a collaboration launched in 2021 between the central banks of Hong Kong, China, Hong Kong, Thailand, and the United Arab Emirates. And so, what does this mean? Now, I'm almost certain it was Thailand. Let me just double check. I want to say that Thailand just joined the BRICS or formally applied, and I think they did. Yep. So Thailand has just formally applied to the BRICS. China is in the BRICS. The United Arab Emirates is in the BRICS. Saudi Arabia is in the BRICS. Do you see a trend in all of this? So is it going to happen on the 9th, man? I don't know. And I think it's better to speak in terms of probabilities rather than to pigeonhole yourself into the 9th. But I will tell you, this will be one of the greatest calls I've ever seen in my career if he nails it, because I have dug. When I read that article, I looked everywhere. Where the hell's he getting this? And I can't find it. So maybe he's right. But it does mark the 50-year end of the deal. And when you put it in context with the Enbridge and with the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia's admission last year that China was our most important trading partner this year and for the next 50, were those words specifically chosen, or is he just speaking hypothetically? So, dude, as the Chinese curse goes, may you live in interesting times. And honest to God, I don't know that I've ever seen more interesting times where every single day something new is happening. And these are some big developments nonetheless.
I don't like that he said June 9th, because then if it's not, or if nothing happens on June 9th, people might think it's not as credible. Regardless, this is something that is happening and will soon. I don't like, and that's 3 days away. Like, holy shit. But here's what's let's look around the globe. BRICS meeting to install the end around the US dollar, gram of gold for barrel of oil. Ukraine continues to siphon the taxpayers' wealth. Congress illegal insider trades are intensifying. About 1.7 trillion, or nearly 30% of outstanding commercial real estate debt, is expected to mature from 2024 to 2026. Most of this debt's going to need to reprice during this time, at a time when office values may have fallen about 34% from the 2021 peak. Also says many commercial buildings are selling 75% less than last purchase price. Example, FedEx building in Ohio sold for $9. Corporate layoffs are intensifying.
Hang on, stop right there before you keep going. Yeah. I've never seen anything like this in my life. The former One AT&T Center in St. Louis, I probably brought this up on your show, the third tallest building in St. Louis, 34 stories, I want to say, was sold for 205 or 6 million in 2006. Just sold for $3.7 million. Yes, you heard that right. $3.7 million for a 34-story tall office building, third tallest building in downtown St. Louis, just sold for 3.7 million. It was sold to a real estate investment trust in 2005 or 6 for 206 million.
consumer goods under lock and key at Walmart's, Targets, and throughout mainstream America. COVID war ravaged what is left of our family-owned businesses. Biden stuff. You guys can check this out. Silverindustry.substack.
I think people have a hard time believing that we could actually be misdirected by authorities, that we could be misdirected to be thrown off the scent, off the trail. I will tell you that I believe that does happen. I think that misdirection is very
Price. Price is the greatest
tool of misdirection. It is. You're right. And that if you want to misdirect the public, that's all you got to do. Like I often say, I live in a neighborhood where the guy across the street from me is one of the biggest money managers in Florida. He's in the Forbes top 50 list. And the only time he ever asked me about gold and silver is when the price is down. And he wouldn't know a gold eagle if it fell on his foot. Now, this is a guy that manages $4 billion. $4 billion. The public has no idea what's coming. And the recency bias and the normalcy bias that, look, if you've been a broker over the past, 20, 30 years, you've lived through nothing but boom time, where since 1982, interest rates have gone straight down until just recently, making selling equities and bonds a very, very lucrative deal, and one where you have a very good chance of doing well by your customers. Let's see what happens when interest rates massively go the other direction. And I think there'll be a very big problem. So you have the majority of this country asleep at the wheel. You have the majority of this country not owning any physical precious metals. And you see, again, deficit after deficit after deficit. You see supply dwindling off the exchanges. And the one thing that's really strange about all of this is that right now the retail and wholesale industry is flush with product, and premiums are as low as they've been in 4 years. I look at that as bottoming out. This cannot last when you see deficit after deficit after deficit and the exchanges being bled dry. It's that the public hasn't been shaken up yet enough to realize that the banks aren't safe, the brokerages aren't safe, that traditional investments need to be reevaluated. Even the best laid plans need to be reevaluated. That 60-40 split, how's that working out for you right now, where the 10-year treasury has lost 50% of its value over the last couple of years, and where the equity markets have done not a whole lot unless you're in the top 7 stocks that are holding up the entire indices. So, I just think the bottom line is this: it's getting real, and I think people need to understand, when you see United Arab Emirates stop taking dollars for oil, we are this close to the shit hitting the fan. And then when it happens and it breaks the fragile banking system, which is massively over leveraged and undercapitalized, and all of a sudden rates spike and you see banks fall one by one by one by one, and the bail-ins that no one knows about, Google bail-in, Google the Dodd-Frank Act, and see what happens when people lose all their money in their bank accounts. And like that, people say, my God, where can I put my money? Oh, gold and silver. Oh, too bad. Can't find it anymore. Because in a matter of days, when you see that kind of demand, it would bleed dry the entire industry. And that now is very flush.
And people might say, oh, that's impossible. But look what happened with Wall Street Silver early February 2021. Nobody could buy it. APMEX was not taking orders. One of the biggest places, they literally said, we cannot take orders. JM Bullion, you would be in the add to cart, it would freeze. Every site was breaking down.
Want to know why that happened? You know why that happened? You know why that happened? I'll tell you why that happened. So I lived in Minnesota then, and I moved to Florida subsequently. My parents rented a house in Boca Grande Island, which is on the other side of Florida. It's over on the Gulf side. And my dad called me up and he said, your mom and I rented a house. We've been here a week. I'm bored shitless. So bring your family down. You can have the house. I'm going home. Oh, by the way, we just bought a condo in Fort Lauderdale, he said. And so, we're going to be down here more often. I said, great. So I packed up my family. So we're going on a vacation. I had no idea that what I'm about to tell you is going to happen. Zero. And so we pack up to go on a vacation. When we land in Florida, this is in the middle of COVID, when everything's locked down, when Minneapolis led the nation in defunding the police, and the city became a very frightening place, a place that I was not proud of any longer. And I land and I find out that Governor Walz from the state of Minnesota wants to raise income tax to 10%. I call my dad and I say, we're at the house. Thank you very much. Give me the number of your real estate agent. And I'm there for 10 days. That night, Silver Squeeze happens. The only time in 10 days I left that house was to go across the state to Delray Beach to look at the house that I live in now. And I left for a vacation. I came back with a new house. I had no idea. But that Friday night, when this all started, my head trader called me up and he said, things are getting crazy. How long do you think we should go into the weekend? What he meant by that is, how many COMEX contracts should we buy at 5,000 ounces a piece so that we can sell product over the weekend? Because you could sense things were heating up and things were changing. And so I said, I don't know, how about 11? So we bought 11 COMEX contracts, which meant that we were 55,000 ounces long, which means that anyone who wants, because the market closes on Friday night at 6 p.m. Eastern, and it sleeps until roughly 6 p.m. Eastern on Sunday, where it opens in Asia. That's the only time it's closed, that period. It's called the access market, where if you can take orders, but you better be hedged unless you're concerned that the price might open up higher. So we buy 11 COMEX contracts into the weekend, having no idea what Silver Squeeze really is going to be. This is on a Friday. And so Friday night, I'm doing interviews with Wall Street Silver and with Arcadia Economics and David Morgan. And I mean, literally for 10 days straight, I worked 18, 20 hours a day, never left a room, never went outside. My kids hated me except to go across the island to buy a house. And I'm working nonstop, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of phone calls and interviews. And it was just, I've never experienced anything like it to this day. And so my head trader calls me up. Well, first of all, I get calls from people Friday night saying, do you see JM Bullion and Atmex are no longer taking any orders? They've stopped taking orders. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. My head trader calls me the next morning, Saturday morning, at about 6:30 in the morning. And he says, dude, he says, we bought 11 contracts yesterday, 55,000 ounces long. You sold 90,000 ounces last night. You are naked. You are exposed by 45,000 ounces to the open price. And now it's Saturday. People are saying the price of silver is going to gap up $20, whatever. And I'm thinking, holy shit, we're 45,000 ounces exposed. And that could bankrupt the company if it really gapped up, right? And luckily we were able to hedge it right away. But when it opened up $2. It cost me over $90,000. And that's what happens when you sell more than you have hedged long. And so all of those companies, the reason they shut down was because they could not hedge the exposure into the unknown. Well, that's exactly what will happen. We will wake up on a Monday morning to find the price gapped way higher for whatever reason. Maybe it's OPEC dumping the dollar or whatever it may be. And it's a system that when I left Minnesota, not only would I have bet anyone in the world that I'm not going to not come back and sell my house immediately. I'm going on a vacation not to buy a new house, but it happened. But by the same token, I watched some of the biggest companies in America, myself included, stop taking business. We shut down on Saturday. I said, no more. Saturday and Sunday couldn't take any orders until it opened up and we could hedge our position and go long. But I'll tell you, that's how fast things change, like that. And in one night, it overwhelmed the industry. Well, what happens if the shit really hits the fan this time? In one night, the entire industry will sell out of product. Because what you and I and the people listening to this show are, sun in my face, we're the pimple on the elephant's ass. When the elephant, which being the public, says, oh my God, that bank just failed in, they lost everything. And they run to the safety of something like precious metals in your own possession. I'm telling you, and I mean this honest to God, in a period of 24 hours or less, it will bleed dry the entire industry. There's that much money out there. And one really, really wealthy guy could could destroy the whole retail industry
They
in a
did.
very
They did. Look at the Hunt brothers.
well, and you know something? Speaking of that, the Hunt brothers realized that there were far more contracts issued than there were bars behind it.
So
Do you know
turn them
what
into
the open
physical
interest is right
delivery.
now on the registered category? The registered category of COMEX are the bars that are held for delivery, backing the contracts that are issued. It is rehypothecated 1,790%, call it 1,800%. That means 1 out of 18 get their silver, the rest gets force majeure cash settlement. That close to the whole system blowing up. And you know, the little boy who cried wolf has been saying this forever. And I'm on the cover of the little boy who cried wolf, but the last page, the wolf comes. And I'm telling you, mathematically, economically, and sprinkling of real old school logic, the wolf is coming. Don't know when or how, but if you're not already in position, you got about 30 seconds to do so.
Yep.
To put your head between your knees and you know, kiss your ass goodbye type of thing.
Yep.
I hope it doesn't happen that way. I'm sorry for using profanity. I shouldn't do that, but I'm very serious about this, and I want people to understand that this is a very serious event, which we just saw.
We're trying to help people.
Like
When we say this stuff, like we're trying to genuinely help people. Like we're urging people to take control of your wealth. Like even those contracts, all those people think they own that ounce somewhere, but the only person that actually owns it is the one holding it in their bare hands. Like I always say, like if you can't hold it, you don't own it. If you cannot hold it, you do not own that. You think you do, but you don't.
I believe that counterparty risk will be one of the nastiest phrases people will ever hear over the next year. Not only do you have $112 billion in the emergency funding program that the banks have borrowed into, that is due to sunset or be paid back in March, but you have the most important election of this country's history.
Yeah.
Coming in 2024, and all of the craziness that's going to go along with it.
I haven't heard many people talk about that.
Oh, that's coming. It'll be all that we talked about pretty soon. But you know, 2024 is going to be a year, I think, to go down in the history books.
Yeah.
And
I made a video about that.
So being able to buy metal right now at the lowest premium and best availability we've seen in 4 years, it will go down, in my mind, is one of the biggest mysteries of my career. How is it that when you and I talk offline and we have these great conversations about fundamentals and economics and stuff, how is it that people don't see that who are completely sophisticated in finance? Is beyond me. And I think it will go down as one of the biggest mistakes that people will have made financially, because even the best laid plans need to be reevaluated. And to me, this is one of those times where you need to reevaluate things. And again, the United Arab Emirates will no longer take dollars for oil. I want people to think about that for a minute. What happens if it's Saudi Arabia and OPEC? What happens when every country on the planet who's had to stockpile dollars no longer needs to, and they sell them? People think inflation is only an increase in the money supply. That is the technical definition of it. It is. But in this case, if there's God knows how many more times dollars outside the country, 50 times more, I don't know. Because everyone's had to own them for 50 years to buy oil and they no longer need to, and they throw them back home. What happens when there's the money supply in this country increases tenfold, 50-fold? Who knows? That's hyperinflation. Interest rates have to spike to the moon to compensate. And now you have a villain to point to. It was those bastards. It was Xi Jinping and OPEC and Putin. They did this to us. And now you reset the system. This is the great reset. This is that moment. And now instead of the Fed and the government having to fall on the sword for foolish, irresponsible monetary policy and being the horrible steward of the world reserve currency, now it's a villain that did this to us. And I think it's coming. I do. I swear to God, I think it's coming. And this is about as close as I've ever seen to it happening, when the UAE, who just joined BRICS along with Saudi Arabia, you don't think they're talking? Hey, we're not taking dollars anymore. That's the very beginning of the door closing on the US dollar being the sole settlement currency for oil. It's a big deal.
Do you think I made a video about this as well. I think I sent you something about this. Do you think it's possible for the government to confiscate people's silver? Because I mean, like they did it with gold, Executive Order 6102, which, by the way, guys, they've done it with silver before as well. Executive Order 6814, 1934. The same
Oh,
thing. Give us your silver, you pay a $10,000 fine, 10 years imprisonment or both. Everyone's like, wait, no, that was Executive Order 6102. Yeah, 1933, that was the truth with gold. But guess what? A year later, he did the same exact thing with silver, same punishments. Just nobody knows about that one because the Executive Order
yeah,
6102
you're
was the
right.
most popular.
You're
Same
right.
one, same thing with silver.
And that is him, Roosevelt, right there. That is the executive order. No, I don't. I think that the unintended consequences would be too severe. Um, in 1933, everyone owned gold and silver. Everyone, because it was money.
Yep.
It was tender, um, and there was a different sense of patriotism in the United States then, and a trust in the government to do the right thing. And part of me believes that's why you have GLD and SLV. You got SLV being basically the largest stockpile of silver in the world that is administered by BlackRock and JP Morgan, two of the biggest nefarious entities on the planet.
Yeah.
JP Morgan, who paid a $920 million fine for suppressing the market, is still allowed to be the custodian of the world's largest silver trust.
And their employees getting sent to prison.
Yeah, and
Like no
HSBC, for who may have paid more fines than any commercial bank, the custodian of GLD. So, you know, you create two funds or several ETFs that siphon in all the money because the advisors, they don't want to let their clients buy physical metal because it comes out of their money under management. And once the money comes out of under management, as now everyone gets free trades, they're no longer stockbrokers where they make trades, money on each trade, they're money managers. So anything under the umbrella, they get a percentage of. Well, if it leaves the umbrella, well, no, that's bad. So they'll tell them to buy GLD and SLV or PSLV, PHYS, or whatever it may be. It's an ETF that's still under management. Well, how much easier? And if you read the prospectus on PSLV and GLD in particular, pages 6 through 12, I think, titled Risk Factors, you'd never own the damn thing ever. You'd sell it in 10 seconds. But really, you can't take possession of it unless you're an authorized participant, basically, and take huge amounts of it. It's like the commercial banks. And they'll close that loophole too. But the bottom line is that they could come in on a Friday night, take everyone's metal out of GLD and SLV, pay everyone dollars that's now in their money market account and say, what? We didn't do it. Roosevelt did. We just closed these two ETFs, what the prospectus allows us to do. You want to buy gold and silver, call Miles Franklin or call Money Metals Exchange or call another company. Go ahead. Yeah. It's not illegal to own physical in this country. They would have their cake and be able to eat it too, where SLV is the largest stockpile held by JP. I mean, come on. Instead of going door to door, people who own precious metals are typically fans of the Second Amendment and not patriotic the way they used to be. And so I would say to you that the consequences of the land of the free and the supposed world reserve currency and free markets would do something like that, would confiscate gold, activate eminent domain the way Venezuela did. It would be the end of this country in every respect. And we would have bigger problems to worry about at that point. So no, I think they can take the ETFs, have the lion's share of what they need held in one central location without having to, you know, go door to door and do that. They could also, I guess, in theory, take the metals held in IRAs. I hate saying that, but I think in theory they could. This is one of the reasons why people say, you know, hold it in your possession if you can. If not, make sure it is segregated in your name in a reputable depository like our Brinks program. Everything is 100% segregated. And that's really important. You don't ever want to do commingled or pooled. You want to have direct title to it, unencumbered in your name. So, yeah, I don't think that'll happen this time. I think they'll take the ETFs instead.
Real quick, I wanted to bring that to light because you guys know Andy Scheckman and I by now. And if you are someone that cannot physically hold it, you do not want to put your trust into someone that you don't genuinely know. Even if you talk to him, you know, time and time through email or whatever, like, you know, Andy personally, like, you know, he's a genuinely good person, and if anything even were to happen, he will fix it, you know, God forbid. But that's another reason I think it's important that I am able to offer you guys a business relationship through him, because if you cannot physically hold it, that is already somewhat dangerous itself. So going with Andy makes it a little safer, in my opinion, just to put it, you know, as bluntly as possible.
And I
You
appreciate
know,
that. I do, and that's
I
why I
wouldn't
work.
trust anyone else. If I had to hold it online, I would not go through anyone else besides you.
I love you
Honestly.
saying that, and that means a lot to me. We've done this for 34 years without a material customer complaint. I've pissed people
Yeah.
off, try to make it right. I've made mistakes, I try to make it right. But we haven't had a material complaint in 34 years and $9 billion in transactions, and um, we'll continue to strive for that. And you know, I often say I hate the fact that people have become so cynical, where you can't believe that good intentions and capitalistic intentions go
Yeah.
hand in hand.
I
Where
never understand why people can't, like that always baffles me. I guess the people who think that are the ones that aren't like us. I mean,
well, they're not entrepreneurial.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
you can want to build a business that your daughter or my kids are proud of, and put food on the table while still being fair and have good intentions. I mean, they
Yeah.
don't have to be mutually exclusive, and I think that's a big compliment you gave me, and I appreciate that. And that's also why for our storage program, I only use bricks. It's a third party. They are very regimented. They are very meticulous, and um, you don't want to allow, in my opinion, the company you purchase from to be the company that is storing it for you in their own vault. I could do that, but I don't. Instead, I use Brinks where it is a third party, where it is fully insured, where it is fully segregated, where there is a wall between us and the ability to access that. And that's the most important thing. And if you
That's a good
have,
point.
you know, you could have 100 grand worth of gold would be right now less than 50 ounces. You're talking 2 pounds. You could have that in your pockets, and no one would know. You might have some droopy drawers, but you know, again, you're talking very little weight. 100 grand in silver, however, is 400 pounds. Well, you know, and if you continue to purchase it, um, it becomes logistically challenging for some people. So if you have to choose storage, I believe we have the best storage program in America. We are the envy of the storage industry. We have worldwide exclusives that Brinks has offered us that no one else has, including fixed rates, including locations in North America that no one else has, including the only safe deposit box program in a Brinks facility in North America. So we're very proud of our relationship with them, but I worked with them, or I chose them because they're the preeminent name in vaulting, and in a world of imperfect choices, to me, it's as good as you're going to find.
Would you ever think about running for president?
No, I inhaled. Oh, I
I feel like so many people will vote for you. I've actually got a lot of comments from people like that, like Andy for president.
no, you know,
Oh man.
I got way too many skeletons in my closet. I was a crazy young guy. It's amazing I'm still alive. You're sweet to say that. I,
My audience.
I no, I'm not qualified for that. I think that nor is our current president, by the way, in my own
Right.
humble opinion. But um, you know, I think that common sense is lacking in a lot of
Yeah.
places these days, and I appreciate you saying that. But no, I will tell you that Dean Phillips from Minneapolis, who's running now on the Democratic ticket, is a guy I played softball with for years, and a guy I've known most of my life, and comes from an incredibly wealthy family. They owned Phillips Liquor, and he developed on his own Talenti ice cream, and incredibly talented, really really solid guy. So that's the closest I'll get. I bet if he actually became president, which I don't think he will, but he's running, I could call him. I could call him right here on this show, and he'd probably answer. So
That would be
you know, at
awesome.
least I know someone in high places. But no, I'm not
Yeah.
qualified for it. But you're sweet for
Yeah.
The atrocity of war is horrible, and you know, I think that
the way that this particular war is played out is just horrible. I mean, you look at what's happening, they're beheading babies and doing all of these things. It's horrible. I can't even hardly watch it. But on a bigger picture, part of me feels this is being done to drag us into war with Iran. And I don't know how that plays out. There was a show that I watched when I had knee surgery a few years ago. I think it's called 0 Days. I'm almost positive. And it's a story of how the Israeli Mossad and the CIA used something called the Stuxnet virus to infiltrate the Iranian nuclear reactors, the centrifuges. Now, their centrifuges where they're trying to build a bomb are well fortified underground, and they couldn't get into it. So what did they do? They built a virus, computer virus. They put it into the electrical plant next, that provided electricity to that compound, and it blew up the centrifuges. I think when you speak of a country that like Iran that has aspirations publicly of using a nuclear weapon, I think it's serious, and I think this could drag us into World War III. Could it? Maybe. Will it? Don't know. What does it mean now that Iran is part of the BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization? Don't know. There are a lot of don't knows. This is that interesting part of, may you live in interesting times. Interesting is an interesting way of listing and talking about it. But whatever it is, we're spread very thin. We're a country that's going broke. We don't have the money to support these two wars, even though you could argue maybe, to an extent, these are look, Israel's our ally and has been for a very long time. And do we want to have that vacuum replaced by countries that don't have Western interests at hand? You can take Judaism and Christianity and all of the religious aspects out of it, which is hard for me. I'm Jewish. I never even had a bar mitzvah. I'm not religious at all. I'm very spiritual, but it's painful to see what's happening. But I think there's a bigger picture behind it, and hopefully it doesn't drag us into a big war, a global war, which it very well may. But what ultimately, I look at this at a time when this country is upside down in debt. There's a record 17 trillion in debt, a record 12 trillion in mortgage debt, a record 1.6 trillion in auto debt, a record 1.6 trillion in student debt, which happens to be the largest asset of this bankrupt country. Yeah, you heard me right. It is the largest single asset of the United States. And we are not prepared, I think, for very difficult, tough times. And I think what you could see by this, perhaps, is a acceleration of the BRICS formation to push away from the Western hegemony. I think we will see things very, very, I think things will unfold very, very quickly from this point forward as it pertains to sides being chosen, alliances that will be formed. I think there's a lot more to meet the eye. That there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. And although we can't see it right now, I think within the next few months we will start to see a lot of things accelerate away from the dollar, away from the West. And I think this country is not in position to handle what that really means, because we are so massively in debt. We have so little in terms of assets. We are spread so thin. We are a divisive country who is not united anymore with one another. We are at each other's throats about everything, even about this war. Is it Israel's fault? Is it Palestine's fault? But whose fault is it? And it's weird that you even have to say this after all of these years, that people wouldn't support Israel. This isn't a political thing. This isn't a Jewish thing. This is just, look at the way, there should be rules of war.
And, God forbid the United States, and I guess maybe, who knows? God forbid the United States would go in and do these types of horrible things to civilians and to little babies and to elderly people. 25 American people are dead. This is something we should be rallying around our ally. And instead, again, we're divisive. This divisiveness will kill the United States. This divisiveness that's the first thing you do in the Communist Manifesto. You divide and conquer. And look at how divided we are on everything. And it's not just division, like it's more about almost visceral hatred of one another's opinion. And I'm not that way. I come from a home where my family were hippies. My house smelled like weed. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll were just a normal thing to me my whole life. I respect everyone, no matter who you sleep with or what drugs you do or whatever the hell you want. As long as you're not thrusting it upon me, I respect you. I can still hang out with you and go to a party with you or play sports with you or do whatever. It doesn't mean I need to go home with you. It doesn't mean that I need to do the things that you do, but I can still respect you as a person. That's how I grew up, and child of the 70s and 80s. And I'll tell you, that's something that's gone. And I think that is a very bad thing, because we should not be so divided about so many things, in particular, standing up for our allies. And, the Ukraine wasn't our ally the way that Israel has been. And I just think that things are going to get really ugly because of, look, what's going on geopolitically is upside down, and also economically. But that doesn't bother me as much as the divisiveness in this country. That to me is more frightening than anything else. And we are not prepared to unite against a common threat or a common cause, and with our backs to the wall, rise to the challenge. Instead, we hate each other, we're angry at each other. There's lawlessness. There's no respect for authority. There's no respect for religion. There's no respect for the nuclear family, and everyone's broke and in debt, and rates are rising. This is a bad thing. So I don't know. I don't mean to go on my soapbox. It's way different than we just talking about silver. But look, I mean,
this is
I think
important.
at some point you have to just accept it and either do the best you can to protect yourself and your family, or get run over by it. And I think most people don't even see it, and they can't get out of the way of what they don't see coming.
Yeah. This is why the 2024 election is so important, And I was going to say, I think that a lot of people are even scared to say the stuff that you're saying, especially publicly,
I think about that a lot. Like, am I stupid for saying this stuff? I'm sure I'll get shit for it. I don't know.
No.
It tells me it has to be said.
Exactly. And it's social media plays a huge part in a lot of this, But going back real quick, you said a lot of stuff that is important. You talked about the why. I could say silver's going to hit triple digits next year, but if I don't explain why I'm saying that, it's not saying much, and that separates the true stackers from the people that just hop on the hype train, like the Wall Street silver hype train. Because if you don't understand why, you're going to panic sell. You're not going to have that faith. You need confirmation and validation that it can go up. And when it doesn't, then you end up, freaking out. When silver goes down to $11 in March of 2020, I'm celebrating when a lot of people are freaking out, because I understand silver's true value, and more importantly, the dollar's true value. And then you talked about the macro as well. When I was on Robert Kiyosaki's podcast, that was something I brought up a lot. He was focused on the micro, and I was focused on the macro. And actually, the next day he tweeted about that, which is funny. But I think that those two together, a lot of people just focus on one or the other, but those two together is what makes silver so, have so much potential, opportunity behind it. So I'm glad that you're also on board with that, because no one really talks about that. And when I watch channels, they focus on the micro a lot.
Micro is the worst thing to focus on as
exactly
accumulation of precious
the bigger
metals,
picture.
unless you're a trader. If you are
Yeah,
swing trading,
exactly.
yes, it should be
Exactly.
important.
Exactly.
The
Exactly.
macro is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, the micro is the game within the game. The macro is the
Yeah.
game. And,
Yeah.
you know, there are times to look at micro, I guess, but the macro perspective, the broader perspective, to me is the only thing that really matters. And that's why very often I repeat myself, and that's why
Yeah.
very often I'm early. I've been saying, you know, there was a time in 2019, late 2019, 2020, where I'm the only person out there talking about the bricks. My wife grabs me by the ear and says, you know, you're saying the same shit over and over and over again. I said, but no one is talking about it. It's so
Exactly.
important. Look at what's happening. And now everyone talks about it.
Right.
I wasn't talking micro back then. I was talking a big picture, de-dollarization, the rise of the Belt Road, the reclassification of gold, and now all these countries joining together, buying gold and repatriating it. Something big is happening here. Yeah, the micro, you could look at each one of these pieces, but to me, you take those pieces and put them together and they say a much bigger thing.
Yeah.
And it's just the pieces in and of themselves don't have the same significance as all of them put together. And then looking at them, oh geez, could this all be part of a bigger picture? That to me is the most important thing. And the
Yeah.
people who get upset when silver falls don't understand it, or they own it for the
Exactly.
wrong
Right.
reasons. And you know, you have a little girl, she's just a few years old, and if I were you, I would be accumulating silver every chance
Yeah.
I get, and hope to heaven I never need to use it. If I do,
Yeah.
not just for an emergency, could be a hell of an opportunity, maybe. You know, maybe it's to put your kid through college. Maybe it's to buy her, pay for a wedding. Maybe who knows what it's for. You know, silver and gold are two of the only forms of insurance that you can collect on without an event happening. You don't have to get into a car wreck or watch your house burn down. You can collect on it for an opportunity or an emergency. And if not, you are leaving a lasting legacy for your heirs. That's how I feel about it. And if you look at it in that micro perspective, oh, geez, it's down 50 cents today. I mean, yeah, it can be frustrating. It can be disheartening, even for looking at it through a macro perspective, because it's very counterintuitive to the way it should be. But
Yeah.
ask yourself, if it's so counterintuitive to the way it should be, if the biggest money in the world is accumulating it while the four or
Right.
five central commercial banks suppress the price, and we know that to be the case, then is it more important? Because why are they suppressing it? And why are the big sovereign governments around the world standing for delivery, draining the exchanges, playing, you know, using the ninjutsu move, the leverage of the Western suppression against us? These are the bigger questions. And looking at just the price action, as we've said on your show, I don't know how many times, it is the greatest tool of misdirection.
I was about to say
You're
that. I was about
misdirected
to,
by the price when the big money is showing you the macro trend.
yeah. I loved when you said that, man. That always stuck with me. That always stuck
It's
with me.
true, though. I mean, if you
Yeah.
want to misdirect someone, it's very easy.
Yeah.
Most people don't lift up the hood and they just look at the paint job. And that's a problem. You know, you buy a new
Yeah.
car, if you don't look under the hood or have a mechanic look under the hood, well, you know, not very smart.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because I started talking about the silver shortage back in like 2020, and nobody was really talking about it, especially that I was watching. And now everyone does. Even scientists are trying to, figure out stuff. Even NASA, it's crazy that nowadays it took, I think it, I think it took something like the biggest supply, like 2023 record-breaking supply deficits, 1.21 billion ounces. And I think now people understand the severity of it. Before they didn't understand that. And I think when they understand it to the degree where it's inevitable, like 2025, 2026, because every automobile company by the year 2030 will be electric, right?
You
And
know
if
why
we're
no one
already
understands it, though? No one understands it because the price is misdirecting. Well,
right,
if it's such in short demand, man, then why is it so cheap? Why isn't the price going up? And that's why it's such an effective tool,
yeah,
because they are able to control people's emotions by controlling the price. And emotions are much more of a
yeah,
motivating factor to most people than logic is. And, you know, we're
yeah,
motivated by fear and greed, and fear being the strongest motivator. So people come in
because they're greedy and they want to make money. Oh, everyone's talking about this being so undervalued, and then it loses value. Counterintuitively, they get scared. They sell. Motivation
Yeah.
is everything, and the people pulling the strings understand this. But what they really didn't count for when they started suppressing the price is that half of the world would say, fine, we'll play your game, but we'll stand for delivery. And that is why there is a shortage up on the large
Right.
exchanges.
Yeah. COMEX.
But it doesn't register with people, because I am saying best availability, lowest premiums we've had in years. Well, it hasn't trickled down yet. It will. And I'm very consistent. When will it happen? I think it'll happen when the next bank failure happens and the bank is bailed in. And no one understands, very, very few people even understand what a bank bail-in is, but it was written into law in the Dodd-Frank Act. And maybe you could put a link to the Dodd-Frank Act in the show description. Go through it. Look
I
what it
will.
says about bailouts. They're illegal. And that's why there was such outrage when Silicon and Signature were bailed out, because evidently Janet Yellen thought they'd bring down the whole system. So the bottom line is that bail-ins are the name of the game now, not bailouts. And I think that's when we see things really get crazy. When people say, my God, where do we put our money? And that's when everything like that disappears. And it goes from being flush to not, just like that, just that fast.
Then this other article I found, the guy was talking about how the BRICS have their own types of issues within themselves because of religion and all of that. So it's not as rainbows and unicorns. They have their own hurdles to
I'd like to
cross.
talk about that too,
Yeah,
but
that was a very interesting article.
Look, when you talk about the BRICS, the difference between what people don't understand about the BRICS, sure, they do have their own hurdles to get over. I would argue that their enemy's enemy is their friend, that dealing with these hurdles is something that they would probably find less of a hurdle than it would be dealing with the West. And I think that it's important to understand that when you look at the BRICS, these countries are doing things in a cooperative manner. There is no, they do not have a, am I trying to say? They are not bound to any rules. They are together out of cooperation. They are not. They are
That's
doing
a good point.
and so they're not. They are not bound to rules and regulations. They are doing it in a cooperative fashion.
Yeah, they're applying. It's not like they're forced to. Yeah, they're coming out and saying we want to join this. So it's more of like that makes sense.
And it's important to understand that, but they don't have obligations to one another, I guess is what I'm trying to say. All of the cooperation is voluntary. And so when you realize that this is a cooperative endeavor where the presidency rotates every year, it was in South Africa last year, it's in Russia this year. If you look at the way they're striking deals around the world, building infrastructure and whatnot in a cooperative manner, I mean, that's the way all business and trade should be. Like even little kids on the playground trading crackers for cookies. If I have something you want and you have something I want, then we trade. And that's what it is. And when you talk about the role of money in all of this, money is just used if I don't want what you have, I'll buy it with money. So, but when you talk about cooperation, these countries all have the natural resources, and so they are trading with one another and with cooperation. Some of the countries, all of the 30 countries that have formally applied, if you look at what they have inside, every single one of these countries that have formally applied recently are massively natural resource rich, every single one of them. And a lot of them, the common denominator is that they haven't really been able to industrialize these natural resources. So China comes in and the BRICS nations come in and they help them, the BRICS New Development Bank, and they help them develop their infrastructure and their natural resources. And then they build, channels to help them get them out. Let me just read a couple of them real quick. I know you want to get to these questions, but
no,
right,
this
so
is
Afghanistan, these are the countries that have formally applied. They're rich in resources like copper, oil, natural gas, uranium, coal, iron ore, rare earths, lithium, chrome, blah, blah, blah. Algeria has the 10th largest proven natural gas reserves globally, is the world's 6th largest gas exporter, and has the world's 3rd largest untapped shale gas resource. Bangladesh, one of the world's top 5 fastest growing economies, and shares a 4,100-kilometer border with India. Bolivia, very rich in minerals, including tin, silver, lithium, and copper. China has also invested considerable sums of money into the country via the Belt Road Initiative, including neighboring Peru, with ports specifically built to handle future Bolivian exports. Cuba, an active member of the Belt Road. Cuba shares close cooperation in infrastructure, technology, science, tourism, and energy. Ecuador, negotiating free trade agreements with China and Eurasian Economic Union. Indonesia has abundant natural resources. Primary industries are fishing, petroleum, timber, paper products, cotton, cloth, petroleum, natural gas, bauxite, coal, and tin. Its main agricultural products are rice, coconut, soybeans, bananas, coffee, tea, palm, rubber, sugarcane. Kazakhstan economy is highly dependent on oil and related products. In addition, its main export commodities include natural gas, ferrous metals, copper, aluminum, zinc, and uranium. Mongolia, resource-rich and transit point between Russia, Kazakhstan, and China. Nicaragua, the leading gold-producing country in Central America. Nigeria is a nation that has the world's 9th largest gas reserves and significant oil reserves. Pakistan is already a member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, holds a key position within the Belt Road Initiative. It's ultimately intended to link Western China to the Persian Gulf and includes the Gwadar port on the Arabian Sea. Senegal, with reserves in oil and gas and gold. The energy industry is at a growth stage and reserves have only recently been found. The BRICS nations will be keen to secure its supplies. Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's Hambantota and Colombo ports are considered as epicenters of China's Belt Road Initiative in South Asia. They can be used a regional maritime hub between South Asia, Southeast Asia, Central Asia, Middle East, and East Africa. This in turn gives additional import connectivity routes via the International North-South Transportation Corridor from Pakistan's Gwadar or Iran's Shabanar port through Central Asia, on and on and on. Sudan, top five export markets are 100% BRICS, China, Russia, Saudi Arabia, India, and the UAE. If they join, it would give complete control of the Red Sea routes. So Sudan was one of those. It gives complete control of the Red Sea if they join. Sudan is the African continent's 3rd largest gold producer. There's 30. No, these are the top 20. So there's 4 more. Thailand, it's in the ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations. So they're just natural to fit in there. Turkey, again, Turkey asked to be part of the European Union and they turned them down. So now they're joining the BRICS. Uruguay, I don't know what they have. I didn't write that down, but Uzbekistan, 80 tons of gold annually, 7th in the world, 10th in the world copper deposits. What else does it say there? It says ranks 11th in the world in natural gas, 7th in the world globally in uranium, significant untapped resources of oil and gas, and then Venezuela, number 20, the world's largest known oil reserve. So when you talk about all the countries that are joining BRICS, this is a massive deal that is coming in October. There's 30, that was 20. There's another 10 that have formally applied and another 20 or more that have informally applied. So yeah, this is crazy.
This came out 4 hours ago. South Africa says 5 countries confirmed they're joining BRICS. January 31st, 2024. Literally 4 hours ago.
Well, you know why they're saying that? Because Saudi Arabia was the one that had not fully committed yet.
Yeah.
And the fact that they have is huge. It's huge. And that's why I like the term logarithmic decay. Little by little by little, these
5 out of the 6 that have confirmed: Saudi Arabia, UAE, Ethiopia, Iran, and Egypt. Argentina is written to indicate they will. Yeah. Oh, that's what I want to mention. Argentina declined. I thought
right.
That was
that's their new president, and okay, fine. So take Argentina out. That's okay. The ones that have, and Argentina would have been a good example, they with their natural reserves, but also they control the Straits of Magellan. So the common denominator between all of these countries is their trade routes and their natural resources. So they're doing things cooperatively and not coercively. And that's a big difference. And that's why this is a different organization than the world who suffers from recency bias understands.